Yeah, I got some areas I want to show you that I think are
As we're transitioning more
really,
into a wooded
yeah, that are really
wooded area here within the prairie, you
Yep.
know.
These areas right here. I mean, you've got some aspens, you've got bur oak, you've got all these other, you've got you even have some native shrubs in here, which are high brush cranberry, and then you've got God, like 3 or 4 different types of shrubs. A lot of red osier dogwood though in here, and the deer, they're always bedded down in here all the time.
It's such a great bedding area.
Well, what's neat about this too is this last spring I had a family of woodcock nest in here. It was really cool to see. Every time I'd walk back here, they got kind of friendly. They'd just kind of hang around you. It was really, but that's an example of an upland bird that just benefits from this sort of thing so much.
You bet. I mean, it's not just deer. It's, you know, I know some of the people that I watch on YouTube too, and I mean, they said, you know, you can really tell when you got your property right when the rabbits come back and the upland birds come back, and then you know that you've got something that's working.
That's exactly right, boy. That's for sure. Yep. Then you benefit everything, and I think that really encourages the deer to be around. You know,
well, absolutely, because they kind of go hand in hand. If they're not around, you're probably not going to have a lot of deer around either.
Now this area right here is kind of an example of a kind of a miniature drumlin right here, if you will. And over here we got kind of a nice wooded area, and up here we got kind of a high, tall grass prairie with these bur oaks I planted here. Well, this is probably about 15 years ago. These grow pretty slow because this is on a kind of a rocky area, a rocky drumlin area. So they're growing a little slower here, but I'm trying to recreate like an oak savanna right here. And oak savannas kind of have a whole different population of prairie species than like an open field of prairie. So I'm trying to get this healthy enough where I can start introducing some of these plants that can go underneath these bur oak trees, but trying to recreate like an oak savanna here, which if you read back into pioneer days, that's where they used to hang out a lot, and that's where deer used to hang out a lot to get in the shade and to get out of the prairie heat, you know, in the middle. But this is what I'm trying to recreate. Deer beds just galore in here. It just, they love it already. You know, it's just a neat thing to have. But oak savannas, I believe, is one of the rarest ecosystems, at least in Wisconsin. So I wanted to take this is about a 5-acre area here. I'm trying to do that on here. And I was just blessed enough that it's kind of a nice high area where these oak savannas used to be historically. So, because the elevation's pretty good just because of this little mini drumlin, I'd call it right here. So, but great spot for deer.
And it's super important, and when we go and do properties too for clients, it's super important to look at the terrain of the property, because you know that really sets the tone for what you need to do and what can actually grow in these areas.
That's exactly right. And once in a while, bur oak trees historically are pretty much a fireproof tree, but there's one right there that really caught fire. And if it had really burnt, but if you go down and look at the bottom of it, there's actually a new sprout of that oak coming out of the ground.
So it's coming back.
So that can happen. So that's one reason and I didn't mow around these the year we burnt this. This would have been 2 years ago. But from now on, I want to try to get these big so I can get a nice shade, so I can start introducing some plants. And I just think it's a lot better for not just the deer, but all the wildlife too. So.
How do your shrubs do when you do your burns, Pat? Your red osier dogwoods?
They get set back a little bit, but they come back so quickly. It's just mind-blowing. And so do all these types of shrubs do. It's just incredible how quickly. But red osier, for some reason, you burn it one year and the next year it's 3 feet tall again. It's one of those things, I believe, that was, you know, in the original prairies, and it just developed this relationship with prairie, you know.
Right.
They can get kind of crazy too. So if you don't burn them and kind of control them, they get really woody and huge. Well, and in some ways, I think they're better off like this because the deer can eat them, you know. And you want to have little thickets of stuff too.
Well, I just did a property this winter for a client that had red osier dogwood that were never managed, and they were probably 15 to 20 feet tall. All the browse was at the top of the tree, and it took me a while to convince him that we needed to cut it down.
The deer can't get that high.
Now it all looks just like that bush you're showing us there.
I would bet that if a deer doesn't eat this yet this year, next spring when things are a little tougher in late winter, that's when I really see deer they seem
Yep.
like they get a little bit more desperate, and that's a time period that we should really focus on making sure there's something available for deer to
You
eat during
bet.
that critical time period.
Yep.
Because deer can get, the snowbanks can be 2-3 feet in here, so we want to make sure that can get at this stuff to eat it and survive.
Yep. They're very critical to have these woody browse that they can get at.
I'm going to shape this area up, Dave.
Yeah. Work in progress, we call that.
I'm going to reseed in this area this fall. Now you get into this area. This is where I kind of left a corridor of nice solid prairie here. So we got a thicket. We got an oak savanna with some beautiful grasses. We've got a real thicket here of prairie grasses, mostly Indian grass in this particular area here. And then we kind of fall off the west side of this here into a lower area. And so in here is where we kind of develop some thickets of red osier dogwood in particular, and then more of your wetter prairie species in here. So the deer generally are up here bedding all year long, basically. A lot of times when I walk back here, they come right out of here. So they're bedding down here all the time, but this is kind of a transition area into a kind of a different type of area here.
Yep,
So,
I see a...
and over here we've got a real thick area right here of red osier dogwood. That's a mulberry tree growing over there, by the way, which I usually try to get rid of them. They're not native to Wisconsin.
Yep.
They really don't benefit a lot of birds. They have a lot of seed on them, but it's the bird seed is not all that great for them. And usually how they get planted is a bird doesn't digest that seed all the way, so it poops it out, and that's probably how that one grew right there. So the more mulberries you can kind of get rid of, the better off I think you are, because then you just don't have to deal with them.
Right,
either,
I
quite
agree.
frankly. So for me, I'm a little weird too. I leave some dead trees like this one, because boy, the birds just love it. The woodpeckers go crazy on it.
Well, we got a lot of bald eagles around this area,
Yep,
and
they
they
benefit
love
from
to
that,
sit in
so.
trees like that.
Exactly. Here's a nice bur oak. This is not even that old. This tree, I don't know if it's on steroids or what, but I planted this tree literally, I think about 10 years ago. It was about 10 inches tall. This is 10 years of bur oak growth.
That
right
tree's
here.
got to be over 20 feet tall.
And it's just straight as an arrow. I think it's so cool. So last year it had acorns on it. I don't know this year if it does or not. It's such a young tree.
They go in cycles. Each
definitely.
species kind of goes through a 1 to 3 year cycle.
Here's where things get, this is an area here where these multiflora rose bushes, which are still existing here, and this is an older red osier dogwood plant. You can just tell by the thickness of the branch and how tall it is.
Yep.
But this is an area right here that kind of survives prairie fires because it's so thick with dogwood. But the rabbits and the pheasants and the deer they love this area back here.
Well,
and they've got some sumac growing back here now too, so. But if you look up in here, Dave, just look at the berries on these plants here. If I can get some of this. This is what birds and wildlife benefit from. Gosh, I mean, this stuff is on all winter. So in the heart of winter, when things are hungry and hard to find, birds and deer and everything can eat this stuff.
This is such a great transition thing, People can get so caught up in the monocultures. I see a lot of clients, so they want to go in and they want to plant all pines. Okay, you kind of touched on that earlier. It really isn't a good benefit to anything. Pines are, you can get some, some benefit early on, and then they grow together, and then they kill each other off, and then you need to thin, or you need to do a lot of work, but. You got to have the diversity in your edges, in your properties.
That's exactly right. This area right here has always been really difficult to deal with. It's because it's low. It floods out in the springtime after the runoffs off the snow drifts off the cornfields here. And it all kind of comes right through this area, and this beautiful prairie over here is really high, so you can tell how that's doing. But in here, this has been tougher to deal with. So I've introduced all these different wetter species for prairie, and they're in here doing battle again with this canary grass. Kind of give you an idea.
It's a never-ending battle.
But
I see you got a lot of goldenrod. I see where it gets.
Yep, there's many different species of it. This is tall goldenrod, it's just a good plant for. I mean, I'd prefer having some of the other goldenrods because they're just more elegant, like showy goldenrod or some of those. But this acts as it's a really important wildlife and insect plant. I mean, the pollinators love it. But again, one of those plants that's pretty durable, can stay up all winter. It's got a really thick stem.
And the deer really do love to eat the leaves off.
Here's a great example of a deer right here chomping on a dogwood. It got up this high, ate that.
Yep.
And then it got a little easier down here, ate that, and ate this. So this is why dogwood is such a beautiful plant. Here's a cool plant. This is called obedient plant, by the way. This is a purple flower usually on top of here. Again, really deep root system in wet areas. So go down 4 feet into the wet area and hold soils, prevent runoff. Great for wildlife. It's got all those right things about it. So
see, we got some aspens wanting to come up out here from.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Here's an example. Here's last year's switchgrass, because we didn't burn this year. So it not only made it through last winter, but it's still standing up. This is last year's plant. This is this year's plant. So switchgrass is like an incredible plant for standing up.
And you see a lot of people push the switchgrasses.
They do.
But I really want to show people that there's a whole lot of other plants that are really beneficial in a prairie situation.
Well, in this situation, if you think about it, we got some big stalks of switchgrass here, which is great for holding soils, providing habitat all 12 months out of the year. But underneath this, you got goldenrods, you've got brown-eyed Susans, which deer love to chomp on these little green leaves here. So I mean, you got all these things that are just all beneficial, and that's what we're trying to do, is to try to benefit everything: the soil, the deer, everything. So this is an example of a bur oak that grows really slow. I'm 56 years old. This tree was planted, oh boy, about 30 years ago. I have trees that I planted, like that bur oak right over there, 10 years ago, and that bur oak is 10 years old and bigger than this 30-year-old one. So you never know what you're going to get, but it's just a slow grower, but it's a beauty.
It is. Great shape.
It is. This is another example of one that I planted 10 years ago too. Look at this monster. So kind of give you an idea of the growth.
Yeah, every tree in every situation, if there's something in the soil that's a little different.
Yep. So now here's where we're kind of entering into this aspen area. And you can tell, there's some smaller ones in here, like these guys.
Great browse,
great browse. All winter, the deer are back here like crazy.
And it's one of these species of tree, especially up here in the upper Midwest, where it's a great species to have because you can cut it down, and the regeneration is it's pretty much the next year it's already coming up, and it's beautiful.
It's so true. It's been a great. Now this is a lot of dogwood, but a lot of aspen in here. And then over there, we're kind of getting into this area where we've got that high brush cranberry. You can see the red up there, way up there. Those are actually the berries of the high brush cranberry. And the deer eat them when they're on the ground. If they're low enough, the deer get them. But migrating birds go crazy for them, especially like cedar waxwings and robins. They're like fighting each other back here all the time, trying to get at them, so.
But, this prairie is really a thriving ecosystem back here.
This area right here is, again, another real challenge area with canary grass. We're just starting to get our hold. There's actually a buckthorn growing right there with the green leaves right there. It's my fault for not getting that out of there. But there's a lot of work to be done. But once you got it established, then you're good to go. Back in here, this thicket right here. Here's a little closer view. You can see how many high brush cranberry there are in here. And some of these, Dave, as you can tell, they're real low, so deer can get these. Just a perfect plant, this high brush cranberry, for
and this is a totally native species.
Totally native species, yep. See, right next door here, this one's it's already kind of dead for the year, but a lot of people pick the berries on all this stuff too. But like this tree right here is not old at all, but look at the size of this thing already.
Yeah, that's probably about a 3 or 4 year old tree is all, if even that.
And it's just great for wildlife.
Yeah.
They come up quick.
Yeah, the bucks love to rub on them. And the browse is greatly needed up here.
That's right. Here's a tree that fell, which I got to cut yet, obviously, but I leave that one up every year, and the whole top of that tree is northern flickers nesting up there.
Wonderful.
So I never had the heart to cut it down. I thought I'd leave it for the birds, but
got to leave something for the birds.
That's right. Here's another example of a black oak right here. I planted this one when I bought this property, 1992, I believe it is, and it's provided an amazing amount of food and just shelter for wildlife, everything, birds, you know, deer are always bedding underneath this thing, so it's been a great tree, you know, just to have. It grew fast.
I'm sure it's producing acorns.
Yep, oh yeah, it definitely has. Back here, this has always been kind of a problem area too. See how this prairie is just starting to take over now. It's just starting to move in
So
there.
what do we got coming up out there that's got the...
Those are called Phragmites. It's actually, or I call them flaggers, it's kind of a nickname, but Phragmites are actually an invasive plant. So we got to get in there and remove those this year back in here. Last year we came in here and removed them all. There's a few that came back over there. It was kind of our first thing, was trying to get rid of the non-native stuff in here was the first thing. And we've got to go back in and get rid of those before they seed out. So, but we got prairie coming up in here now. See those big, those are compass plants coming in. And there is even some grasses. Those are pretty new plantings. So this was an area here when I bought this. This is a giant rock pile of farm rocks. So, and it was in between all those rocks, there was a bunch of box elders coming up and European buckthorn. So we slowly got a bobcat and started removing all of the stones and cement. And it's just a tough area to deal with because it was just so abused, you know. I mean, but it's coming along. We're getting there anyway. So
a work in progress
work
again.
Work in progress, but it's been a lot of work.
See a lot of good stuff in there though.
Love to see deer in here though. They come in here a lot though. They kind of transition from more of the prairie towards my home back to the marsh through this area a lot. So, but the prairie's really kicking in great here now. So. This is a thicket back here, Dave, which is the deer just thriving. This whole area, because this is all prairie, these big bur oaks, I just planted these. I mean, there's a string of them right along here. And then back in here, all red osier dogwood, and just tons of cover for wildlife. And then on the other side of this stretch in here is all wetland, cattail, bulrush type marsh. So when I'm walking back here quietly by myself, constantly hear the deer running through here. And I can hear them when they hit the creek out here because you can hear their hooves hit the water when they're running away from me. So it's this is just a great transition area right here. Deer spend a lot of time in here. I mean, a lot of time. And it's just a nice, safe spot for them, you know, and they feel comfortable in here. I've got a trail cam up on this second bur oak right here. And constantly getting deer, and they're usually going into the marsh here. You know, when you see them on there, because they're heading for that marsh. Just a nice, again, it's that transition place. So if you've got property that's got all these different types of landscapes, if you've got some wetland, if you've got some highland, if you've got some woodland, if you've got some bush areas like all this dogwood here, and that's actually sumac right there, which is another wonderful wildlife plant. But you know, if you got these areas in here. Man, you got all these different places for deer. They can thrive and feed and feel safe, and just makes for a fun hunt. It's a natural hunt. It's just a great way to see wildlife too. So
very nice.
And these willow trees keep falling down though, Dave. This is where a lot of deer come through here though, Dave. It's crazy.
I can see why.
These oaks have done so well. I can't believe these aren't even that old, Dave. These are like, I always judge everything by my kids' age, but Livy's. These would have been planted about 7 years ago, and they were, a good friend of mine had a bunch that he was going to get rid of that were growing in his yard. I went over and I transplanted them. The roots on them were about 2 feet, and the plant was about a foot. So it took a lot to dig them out, but I dotted them along here thinking this would be just a nice buffer for wildlife going down into the marsh and into this thicket here from the highland, you know, from the prairie. And I think it's worked out great. I had no idea it would work this well, but it just, and aesthetically, it's just very pleasing too.
And it's all about edges. If anybody knows anything about whitetails, everything is to do with an edge. I don't care if it's an edge of grass, an edge of one sort of timber to another, an edge of a ridge compared to a lowland.
That's right. So this is nice high, you know, beautiful black soil prairie in here. And again, this is when I bought this property. This was from a neighbor who had run into some financial problems. So I bought this 10 acres back here from him. And again, this was old cars and stuff back here and concrete. So I had to work hard to get it all out of here.
Wow.
And then this has always kind of been back here. This is that smooth sumac back here.
Yep.
Again, another wonderful plant.
And we see a lot of that up here in the upper Midwest.
The deer just go crazy on buck rubbing. They literally will shave off a lot of these. And there's kind of a neat thing going on over here too. I'll show you what happens with sumac and prairie. The prairie in these woodland areas, there's kind of an ongoing forever battle going on, because prairies need somewhat fire to just kind of exist, to carry on and to function and to grow and do well and make soil. And when we have prairie fires back here, the prairie fire will dig in, go into the sumac here quite a ways, and then it stops right about there. So it never quite gets all of the sumac. So there's this ongoing battle between kind of woodland and prairie, and the determining factor is fire in that process. So when we burn this will probably burn all this sumac up to right about here. As you can tell, the older ones are taller.
But you can, burnt, so. Right, but you can tell how the use of the fire. I mean, look at the new regeneration and the younger growth of that sumac.
Yep. And then, like, you'll get this going on. Like, here's last year, a couple of years ago, here's a buck rub.
You bet.
From them. We'll have some of those showing up real quick.
Yeah, there's some more right in front of you there.
And we might even see some today yet. Who knows? But
yeah.
Kind of giving that. But they can see the buck rubs in here.
Pretty much about.
But it's a nice, smooth, sturdy plant.
Every bush in here is.
Yeah, they just love it. They do. Hopefully we see a fresh one in here. It'd be kind of fun. These bur oaks too, I kind of planted them up here. Now this is our area of really a thicket of beautiful, that I mostly know of a native brush, and a lot of it is red osier dogwood. But it kind of comes to the end right here, where this bur oak is here, and that's where the marsh kicks in here too. So, but this area is just magnet for deer. I know this because when deer hunting starts and the shots start going, deer head for this area. They want to be in here because they know it's safe. And I know that because and the cameras, during deer hunting season, you can tell.
They start to light up.
Yeah, like your phone starts lighting up massively, So you can see like some of these buck rubs are kind of cool.
And you can see
this is like
the big trails going up through here.
In here a lot. There's two twin fawns that were born dead. They're usually in here all the time, so I think a lot of that's them knocking stuff down, So here's kind of where the bur oak trees come to an end. This one right here, and then this is another area over here of just thicket. Like we're talking.
But again, it's another edge,
Another
and
edge. The prairie is just on the other side of this, smooth sumac. And then you come down through the sumac, and then we get thick again in here. So we got this nice corridor for deer. When deer are born here, this is where the does mostly birth their young. And over the years, I've just known, because I usually walk this thing twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. So you kind of get to know what they're at. But they have enough comfort to actually birth their deer in here. So it's they're fawns, so it's just a safe, good spot for them.
You bet. You bet.
And this is a trail right along the marsh on the right-hand side, and then on the left-hand side, we got a real thick area of habitat. And you can tell the deer been walking through here, which I'll probably need to mow this. Here's an area here, you can tell, there's a deer track, where some sort of animal is benefiting from this. They have a corridor there.
Probably coons.
Probably a raccoon, which we do have a lot of here,
Yeah.
We do have cornfields around, so they love that, of course. Here's that thick area right here too.
I mean, just such a great edge, and all part of a prairie. I mean, and this is why I really wanted to shoot this with you today, to show clients, how great and diverse that this can be.
Well, you get all these cool plants. Like this is normally a red colored, beautiful plant. This is called Joe Pieweed, but this is how it actually looks in the fall. And these are all the tiny itty bitty seeds here, those little tiny brown things attached to that little white fluff. And this is called Joe Pieweed. Great beneficial plant for all wildlife, especially butterflies, by the way. Here's our marsh over here. This is it's just a classic cattail marsh. There's definitely some beneficial plants on here. There's a lot of dogwood that grows out in little higher areas in this marsh. Deer just...
They love those islands, don't they?
Find them, and they're up there. Yep.